Welcome to the Freelancers Tea Break, the bite-sized podcast all about freelancing and working from home to enjoy during your tea break. Brought to you by Emma Cossey from freelancelifestyle.co.uk. And now, your host, Emma Cossey.
This week's podcast might be slightly longer than usual, but don't worry, you'll still be able to squeeze it into a tea break. So this week I wanted to talk about the term freelancer and whether it's on the way out. So over the last few years, I've had numerous conversations with freelancers who feel, a little bit icky about introducing themselves as a freelancer. In fact, some will try to avoid using the term completely. And it's not something I'm immune to either, despite having a blog completely based around freelancing. At a recent networking event, I did a little test. I introduced myself to some people as self-employed, some as freelance, some as a consultant. I noticed the reaction to the term freelancer was very different to if I perhaps called myself a consultant. And I got the impression that when I used that term freelancer, I was taken less seriously. When I took this question to my Facebook group, I had some interesting responses as to why we get the ick factor in using the F word. Many believe that freelancers make less money than contractors or business owners, or at least that's how they're perceived to be. They also worried that freelancers are considered to be part-time or casual or not as serious as other kind of terms like contractor and consultant and even entrepreneur. There's also been a spike in these kind of earn six figures in your lunch break with my £20,000 course type entrepreneurs. And also there's the whole MLM business, and some of them call themselves freelancers. And I think that can cause a lot of confusion about what freelancing actually is. The other problem was that if you're selling a product, the term freelancer actually throws people now, especially if you were selling things like courses and e-products and things like that. It can sometimes feel a bit like the term freelancer doesn't really cover what you do. And finally, there's the mindset. So it could be considered to be a limiting belief to call yourself a freelancer, because that would suggest that you are a sole trader that doesn't really have any aspirations to be anything bigger than a one-man band. And firstly, I don't think there's anything wrong with just being a one-man band. It's what I am, and I have no real intentions of growing the business to a huge, a much bigger business with lots and lots of staff. It's not really my goal, although it is for lots of people, and that's fantastic. But for lots of people, saying freelancer can feel a bit limiting, whereas saying a business owner or an entrepreneur can move that mindset and take them towards their goals of being a bigger business. Now, the fascinating thing for me is that most of the people in the group were happy to describe themselves as freelancers in terms of what they're doing. So they are happy to say that they are freelancing. But it was when they used the term with others outside the freelancing industry that discomfort set in. So when I asked the group what they called themselves and what they described themselves as, 35 said freelance, 24 said self-employed, 17 said business owner, 4 said other, which was generally when people kind of changed what they said and it depended on the situation what they would call themselves. 2 called themselves consultants, 2 called themselves entrepreneurs, and 1 called themselves a contractor. It's something I find really interesting, and it's something that I have been thinking about myself because of the implication it might have on my own blog. And I'll be honest, when I started looking into this, I did briefly consider whether it was time for a name change for the blog. After all, if people are struggling with using the term, why would I carry on using it? Especially as it's the name of my blog as well. But, as I mentioned earlier, the problem isn't what we consider ourselves to be. It's with how we describe it to others. And I'm not quite sure what the answer is for that. I'd love to be involved with changing the perception of freelancing and what it is and the freedoms it brings, and especially as I think it can be a fantastic option not just for people who have been made redundant, but for graduates who want to try out different industries without the contract of employment and things like that. I think it's fantastic for mums wanting to go back into the industry, and dads as well. There's a lot of dads now who are not as confined by kind of traditional ideas of what they should do once they become a parent. With the new changes in parental leave and things like that, I think it gives a lot of men a lot of flexibility with what they want to do as well. So I think there's so many things that are fantastic about freelancing, and it's just a bit of a shame that from outside the freelancing world, there's a lot of misinformation about what it is. So who knows what will happen with that. But I just thought it was something that was interesting to share. I've written a bit more about it on the blog. So if you jump on freelancelifestyle.co.uk, it's one of the first posts, or I'll pop the link if you're listening a little way in the future. But I really still believe that there's a space on my blog to be talking about freelancing and self-employment, and it's something that I want to continue doing. So for now, I will consider still be the freelance lifestyle. I'd love to know what you think. Do drop me a tweet on Twitter, so I'm freelance_life. Come join us in the Facebook group. I will pop the link in the show notes. It's a really nice, friendly, supportive group, so it's fantastic if you are a new or established freelancer. And you can find me on all the usual places, usually under Freelance Life. Also, one final note, I never know how to sign off on a podcast. It feels weird to say goodbye, or some of the podcasts that I listen to, they say goodbye or see you next week, or they give you a teaser. I'd love to know what you think's a great way to sign off, or if there's any examples you can send me. But for now, it's going to be see you next time, and I will be talking about apps for networking, because I love a good app.